Hey, Blackbird behind people, how's it going? All right, so we are in chapter 9 now, and school has started. And what's something Kit notices right away about the school that she does not like, that she doesn't appreciate necessarily? That's right, she doesn't like the kind of dullness of it. Now, I'm sure you find school a little bit boring at time, but this is, can you imagine doing ah, fa constantly? It's that repetition which does teach the children, yes, but Kit's a little bit bored. And she says about Mercy, I love how she says it. She said, "What patience Mercy had. If only patience were contagious like the mumps." I don't know why that line stuck out to me, but I really like that line. It would be nice if patience was contagious like the mumps. I know I could use some. I don't know about any of you, but I definitely know I can. Well, she goes on to say, and as she's kind of working there, she finds some different rhymes to say with using the kids as names. Charlie Hughes has red shoes. Just kind of trying to teach them in more of a sing-songy, fun manner. And she says, Kit, and I'm on 84. Kit felt at ease with them, as if as she never managed to do with the elders. Why is it that you think Kit feels at ease with the children? What is it about the children that makes Kit comfortable? What do the elders, how do they treat her in the community? How do most of the adults treat her in the community that she is in? And why? Why do they treat her that way? Okay. What goes on 85 is to say that Kit would try tricks, and she calls them ingenious tricks, but Mercy, she had the patience for the kids and gentleness with which Mercy controlled her charges. Now, what they mean by charges here is children. These are the kids in her care, her charges. Not a charge on a credit card, but charges as in the children. Um, it really shows us a good characteristic of Mercy. It goes on to say her warm, sweet voice never raised, her lovely composure never ruffled. Now, as the chanting syllables came to an end, Mercy's met Kit's eyes across the room and smiled. So we definitely learn a little bit more about Mercy and her attitude, the type of woman she is. And how would you classify her? Has your opinion changed? Has it grown? Do you appreciate her more? Are you about the same from the beginning of the book? Discuss that amongst yourselves briefly. Okay, Kid keeps trying to think of new ways to teach things. And one way she comes up with is to teach them using a play. And they're doing the story of the Good Samaritan in the Bible. If any of you know that story, why don't you briefly share it in your group? Remember the Good Samaritan? It's one of the parables in the Bible. Can you quickly share it amongst your group? Okay, are you back? What did you learn? I think it's fascinating that this is the story that she's choosing to tell, and think about how Kit is treated. She may not have been beaten and abandoned along the roadside, but how is she treated? Okay, so she decides she's going to teach the children the story of the Good Samaritan. She says they already know it, but she's going to do it a little bit differently, and that is through a play. They're going to enact the play, and the kids are excited. And Mercy says on page 87, I don't really know about that. Are you sure? Because remember, at this time, play is not really considered proper among good Christian Puritan children. They don't play, and they definitely don't play act. That was one of the things, remember, that on the ship when she mentioned she read plays and read, oh, that just appalled them that she would do that. And so they're play acting it, and she gets really excited and gets the kids involved. Well, she doesn't realize that the three boys that she chose to be the robbers, really dislike the boy that she chose to be walking along the road. And so they get a little bit carried away when they do the robber scene, when they are fighting with them. And at that time, of course, and if you know anything about teaching, it's always then that the I can't even think of who came in then. Oh, Reverend Woolbridge comes in and he's like, "What is going on here?" And he sends all the kids home, and Mercy's upset. And Kit, I admired Kit. I don't know about you, but she did say, she was very upfront. This was my idea. Don't fire Mercy. Fire me. And he says, yeah, you bet you're fired. And Mercy doesn't really say much, but Kit takes off then and goes out to where she had gone with Judith, remember, to weed the onions. And she runs out there and she cries and she cries. Well, why is she crying? Why does it upset her that she got in trouble by this Reverend Woolbridge so much? Are you back? I'll be anxious to see what you guys say on that discussion. Okay, as she's out there, she hears this voice and she realizes it's the widow Tupper, remember? And she was kind of scared of her at first because what did Judith say about the widow? Yes, that the widow was a witch. And so Kit, in spite of everything she's been through, still has that little judgmental side of her. And she's like, I'm not sure I want to be around this lady. And so she kind of is standoffish. But Hannah, she said, thee did well, child, to come to the meadow. There is always a cure here when the heart is troubled. And that's on page 91. What does the widow mean by that? There's always a cure. Does she mean a physical, literal cure? What kind of cure is she talking about? And she calls her, you know, the widow Tupper, this strange little creature seemed to belong here. She's kind of looking around and she talks more with the widow. She says, this strange little creature seemed to belong here, so much a part of the quiet, lonely place that her voice might have been the voice of the meadow itself. What does that tell us about the widow Tupper? What type of a woman is she? I mean, in spite of being judged, was she rude and mean to Kit? No. No, she welcomed her in. She then says, come and get something to eat and clean up before you go back so that you don't scare your family because, you know, like the crying tears. I don't know when you've cried really hard and she says, you know, her tears could have filled an ocean. Those crying tears, so you know her eyes are puffy, her face is probably red, and she hasn't eaten, so the widow brings her in. The widow herself is the Good Samaritan. She's helping her, which I find, again, ironic about the whole story she chooses to play out. So the widow brings her in, and Kit says on page 93, she's looking around, looking about the house, this simple, quickly put together cottage, and she says, "'Tis a pretty room," she said without thinking, and then wondered how that could be when it was so plain and bare. Well, the widow's definitely a modern day minimalist. She does not have all the junk laying around that more wealthy people would have. She has only what's important. Well, why does it make that room beautiful? To me, sometimes the most simple things are the most beautiful. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I think that's what we're seeing in the widow. And the widow herself I see as a very simple woman. She's simple, and she may be old and hunched over and stuff, but there is a certain beauty that's radiating from the widow Tupper. And she talks about her husband, and you can still tell when she talks about her husband that she dearly loved him. She brags about what he's done to the house and them moving there and him finding the perfect place and how he's created this beautiful little home for him, and she's not going to leave. That's where she felt closest to her husband, and now that he's gone, she doesn't want to leave that behind. Well, then she asks Kit on the bottom of 95. She said, what was your grandfather like, child? And that shocks Kit because nobody had, since she came to America, she says, no one since she had come to America had ever really wanted to hear about Grandpa. Well, why would that be important? Do you want to tell about, if a loved one has passed, many times the way to grieve is to talk about them, is to share those good memories. And Kit needed that. She really did need it. Now, it may be different for some of you gentlemen, but she needed somebody to ask her about her grandpa and be able to share those memories and get those out as a way to help her grandfather's memory live on. And the only person to ask her, not her aunt, not her uncle, not her cousins, nobody had asked her about him. But this lonely old widow in the meadow does. And she said, she goes on and she talks about it, and then she tells her, she says, everything I do there is just wrong. I can't do anything right. Have you ever felt that way? It just doesn't seem like you're getting anything right. And it is a sad and lonely place to be in. And she looks, and the widow says something about this beautiful flower that was brought, I believe, from Africa. Her friend brought it to her, and you'll get a chuckle later on who her friend is that brings her all this stuff. Maybe you have an idea now. Make a prediction really quickly. Who do you think this friend is that the widow has? Are you back? Okay, well, she talks about this flower, and she said, I doubted it would grow here, but it just seemed determined to keep trying. And look at what happened. Kit glanced up suspiciously. Was Hannah trying to preach to her? I hope my friend will come while it is still blooming, she said. He will be so pleased. I must go now, Kit said, getting to her feet. Then something prompted her to add honestly, I hope my friend, you've given me the answer, haven't you? I think I know what you mean. What answer has the widow given to Kit? What is she telling Kit to do? Remember, Kit's just gotten done telling her how she doesn't feel like she's doing anything right, how lonely she feels, how sad she feels. What does the widow, what has she told Kit? What advice did she give her without giving her advice? Now, have any of you had that privilege? Do you understand what I'm saying? Where somebody gives you advice kind of covertly. They're trying to tell you something without coming right out and saying, this is what you need to do. Did you listen to the advice, or did you just kind of ignore it and not pay attention? Okay, at the very end of the chapter, she says, the woman shook her head. The answer is in thy heart. They can always hear it if thy listens to it. And Kit goes on to say, Hannah Tupper was far from being a witch, but she certainly had worked a magic charm. Well, what magic charm did Hannah Tupper work? And what answer is in the heart? What is she saying about that? All right, I'm anxious to read the discussion this time. I think next week I'm going to have you guys record your own discussion. So we'll figure out a chapter to do that with. Until then, have a good day. Have a good weekend, Blackbird Pond people.